Hello, my name is Richard Anthony Marca, and this is for CSC323 Week 1 Preparation Assignment. We had three things to read and watch, so this is the first. It is a Google Cloud overview, talking about the different parts of Google Cloud. For example, the universes, regions, and zones, which are the physical machines that run the workloads and Google Cloud services. These machines live in data centers all around the world. At the top of the hierarchy is the universe, which is a self-contained cloud. It's its own network that is separate from the public internet and other universes. Then within each universe are geographic regions. For example, the Google Cloud has regions in Asia, Australia, Europe, Africa, all over the world in different continents. And to separate them even further, those regions are divided into zones. For example, like East Asia has the Asia East 1A. After that, we have the global, regional, and zonal resources, which include static external IP addresses and other virtual machine instances. The scope of an operation varies depending on what kind of resources you're working with. For example, creating a network is a global operation because the network is a global resource, while reserving an IP address is a regional operation because the address is a regional resource. And then accessing resources through services throughout Google Cloud. And then it talks about the projects themselves, which we use in Google Cloud to create a project name and a project ID and a project number. And then it talks about interacting with Google Cloud with the Google Cloud Console, which I have installed on my computer. It also talks about pricing, which we were lucky to have a bit of a discount for that, and a little bit about what's next. The next video we were assigned to watch is the Google Cloud Infrastructure video. It talks about how Google Cloud is a layered model built on 3 layers of architecture. The foundation is based off of networking and security, while the core infrastructure is computation and storage, and the top layer is data and artificial intelligence and machine learning. It also discusses the computing services like the compute engine IaaS, which are virtual machines that are very similar to physical servers, with maximum flexibility for users who want to manage instances directly. It also talks about the Google Kubernetes engine, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, which run containerized applications. Then it talks about the App Engine, or the PaaS, which is good for deploying applications. I've used that in one of my apps classes. Then we have the Cloud Run, which is for stateless workloads, and Cloud Run functions, which execute code in response to events, like file uploads. And it has no servers, no local installation, and no provisioning. And then it talks about hardware acceleration, or TPUs, which is the tensor processing units. Basically a better version of a CPU or GPU that struggle to meet the modern machine learning demands. And it is much more optimized for machine learning operations like matrix multiplication. It's faster and more energy efficient. It then talks about the storage and databases. So there are 2 types of data, unstructured and structured. For the unstructured data, there are 4 storage classes for that. There's the standard, the nearline, the cold line, and the archive, where you use the standard data very frequently. The nearline you don't access as much, maybe once every 30 days. The cold line you only access maybe once every few months. In the archive, which you only use as kind of like a save point that access maybe once a year. And then for the structured data, there are 2 workload types, the transactional and the analytical. where the transactional is more like Cloud SQL, Cloud Spanner, Firestore, which has frequent inserts and updates and small targeted queries. And the analytical reads across entire datasets like BigQuery or Bigtable. The last video that was assigned to watch is the introduction to Google Cloud. This video goes through how to use Google Cloud, starting from a simple single server setup and gradually expanding to a full production grade scalable architecture. It then maps each architectural component to a specific Google Cloud service. So the first thing this video started with is with a basic web app. It gave an example called foo.com, which runs only on one server. And then it talks about how when the app grows, it's going to need more and more servers as it expands. It then talks about scaling the application and the difference between vertical and horizontal scaling, with preference to horizontal scaling because it's a lot more flexible. Then it talks about databases and caching with relational and non-relational, or SQL and NoSQL databases. Talks about in-memory caches like Redis and Memcache, reduce database load. It also explains that media files should live in object storage and not on servers. It then goes on to global performance and messaging, where CDN caches popular content near users, and asynchronous messaging, which handles notifications and background tasks. It then goes on to the analytic pipeline, which is real-time and batch data ingestion, where the ETL and ELT pipelines feed a data warehouse. And this is where data analysts and machine learning teams build dashboards and models from processed data. It later on goes through the security and monitoring, like firewalls, private networks, and access controls to protect the system, and monitoring tools that track performance and detect issues that may happen during a project. And then the main thing it goes over is the different types of architectures to Google Cloud. It goes over computing options like Cloud Run, App Engine, GKE, and Compute Engine, load balancing like Cloud CDN and Cloud DNS, which is more for global delivery, cloud storage for static assets and triggers for media processing, different databases like Cloud SQL, Spanner, Firestore, which I have used personally, Bigtable, and Memory Store. Different analytics like PubSub, Dataflow, Dataproc, and BigQuery. Machine learning thing, which is Vertex AI. Security like IAM, Cloud Identity, Cloud Armor, and reCAPTCHA. And then CI/CD, Cloud Code, Cloud Build, Cloud Deploy, Artifact Registry for different applications. And that should be the end. Thank you for listening, and I will see you next time.